Hey guys, it's the end of the first week of March. Got a bit of an update for you guys and a super Q&A. So if you remember, early last month, I talked to you guys about my new plans for 2020. And over on Patreon, I opened up a questions and answers forum for people where they could ask me various things. And I would go into as much depth as possible on a dedicated video. We're going to do one of these each month as 2020 goes along. And now that February's over, I wanted to deliver that one for you. So if you're watching this video now and you go over to that website, you should see I've got a new post there where you can submit questions for the end of March episode 2. This was actually going to come out last week, but I've just spent this week making a new gameplay series for you guys. I'm not going to spoil what it is, but the uploads are going to be coming like super soon. And unlike the Elder Scrolls stuff that we kicked up, and unlike the re-implementation of the Guild Wars 2 Season 2 LP, this one's going to be something of a mini-series. Now, I say that, it's about 20 hours long. It's about 20 parts, but it's start to finish, and then it's kind of done. It's what I've spent the past week on so on. I'm excited for you guys to see it. And I've just finished today, and I figured, yeah, let's go do the super Q&A now. So let's do that. You guys can ask me questions on any topic, really. It looks like a lot of you all submitted Guild Wars 2 related things, so that's cool. And there should be something interesting for the majority Guild Wars 2 fans here. But there are a few other things littered in. So let's just start off in no particular order. And by the way, a couple of you guys asked questions that are super similar to one another, and I kind of just culled the one, the duplicates away. Hopefully that makes sense. Let's go off with question number 1 then from Ben. Who says, I like how you put the Dungeons videos in the core Let's Play series. Will Fractal coverage and Raid coverage come in the Living World and the expansion LPs? So, yeah, thank you for noticing that. I'm glad you appreciate and enjoy what I did there. People out of the loop, my Guild Wars 2 Let's Play series from 2018 and 19 ended. And then I covered all the core dungeons. That made sense to me because I'm kind of going in chronological order. I've realized as time goes by, I like kind of like documenting the chronology of things. And so it feels most worthwhile to talk about the dungeons right when the dungeons were kind of new content and you have that context of all the stuff that was seated around them. That's what most players did. They played the core story, then they did the dungeons. Then, of course, next, the devs implemented fractals. And then we had Season 1, and then we had Season 2. And now I'm in a Season 2 playthrough, and we've kind of skipped fractals, right? I get it, that's kind of weird. And I do like the chronology of maybe doing everything in order, but you're right, I'm waiting with fractals. What I'd like to do is finish Season 2, and then cover the fractals stuff. And I think I'll probably do them solo. I don't know yet, please don't take that as a promise. But a lot of the easy stuff can be soloed. I think it's important for regular members of the community to realize that fractals aren't this hardcore, elitist, horrible place and that anyone can do them. So if I solo them, there could be interesting buildcraft. Buildcraft was one of those weird things that as the series was going along, a lot of people sort of said to me they didn't enjoy. And then once the series was finished, I had a ton more people say it was one of their favorite things about the series. So build crafting, how to solo fractals might be cool. And I'll cover all of those. Whether I will cover all the fractals, including the new ones, like the Path of Fire inspired one and the Arc trilogy, I don't know. Maybe I'll just do the original ones and then we'll come back later as we progress further along. That's all up for debate. But yeah, I'll do core story, then dungeons, then Season 2 and fractals, then after Heart of Thorns. I'll see what I'm going to do about raids. I can imagine in a super Q&A later this year, someone will ask me this question. And I don't know what I'm going to do with raids right now. The main reason is because I genuinely put a lot of effort into raid coverage already, where I talk all about all the mechanics and I give you all the story exactly as it's seated. Do I want to do the exact same thing again? I'm not sure. What's nice about the dungeon series is I hadn't really ever done a good catalog of dungeon content in that kind of format, and over all the years I've covered Guild Wars 2, I hadn't done it until 2019, last year. About now, last year is when I was getting in on that. And so I'm happy to have done that, and I'll be happy to do it for fractals as well, because aside from some Guild Wars 2 Mysteries videos, I haven't really looked at fractals very much either. So I think that's all fine, but raids I've already kind of covered. Yeah, not a part of the LP, yeah, not with the Let's Play characters, but there's some, and those videos were kind of, I'm very proud of having done, but there was something about them that was quite stressful. Maybe it's just because I was racing against the clock on those, which is never fun. But we'll see. So anyway, yeah, fractals probably after Season 2. Hopefully that explains it to you and my general thoughts. I'm glad that you've had that idea because that's exactly what mine is as well. Belly Ross says, hey WP, I watched you for years, decided to sub after watching the most recent video. This is obvious. A lot of these questions were submitted right after I did my announcement of how awful 2018 and 2019 had been. A couple of people did come and post their questions here, so thank you to anyone in that situation, firstly. They say, I could say a lot, but I'll stick to a question. Do you ever see yourself being able to play games like Teamfight Tactics, or dare I say Legends of Runeterra? These games are strategy orientated, but have a rich and varied lore attached to them. I also want to assure you, you are appreciated and love heart. Thank you very much for that. I think I probably could enjoy these games, really, and I got quite into, but mostly strategy RPGs I quite like. I like any RPG that's a little bit slow, and you can take a little bit more at your own pace, and the more you know about it, the more options you realize you have. I enjoy those kinds of experiences. I think having a really good story and a really deep universe and setting is not as important to me as most people think it is. Most people really like hearing me talk about lore, so they think that that's my highest priority. But it's not necessarily. Yeah, I can get obsessed with it if it's done well. But I don't necessarily buy into products just because they have a good story. Not really. Though I will say, more than anything else, it's not rich fantasy settings I'm looking for. It's mysteries that I like. And I'll explain a little bit more of that in a moment with another question. As for those two particular games, TFT and Legends of Runeterra, I would maybe enjoy them, and I could maybe get into them, and I have a couple of people that I've seen streaming them in the Discord I go to in the evenings sometimes. But I think I feel like I'm an outsider to those, and that tends to be a big thing to me. Maybe you guys get this as well, but if I feel like I'm an outsider, if I feel like I missed the train, if I feel like I'm not one of the club or whatever, I don't know, I feel kind of intimidated looking into it. So I know that's stupid, but it means that from a professional setting, this is, I mean, as just a random person, as a random hobby, I might enjoy stuff like that. But the idea of actually pursuing it as like a professional thing, making videos that I care about and probably think way too much about, I don't know, I get a bit intimidated unless I really feel like I get it, you know. So, yeah, it's kind of a catch-22. How can I be a fan if I don't let myself be a fan? But there you have it, right? I tend to play a thing, like a thing, and then like years later realize what a big fan I am of it, and then, you know, start talking about it. That tends to be more my style than jumping on things that just have come into existence. So yeah. Alright, next we have a question from Arabax, who says, Guild Wars related question. Contrast out of game communities of today, Reddit, the official forums, Discord servers, of those in the Guild Wars 1, pre-Guild Wars 2 era, the Guru forums, the official and non-official wiki, etc. As someone who has dedicated the last 10 years of their life to this community, to living this community daily, I'm interested in your perspective on this shift. Has it affected your content at all? This is probably one of my favorite questions I've ever been asked. I think this is a really, really interesting subject. And, well, let's see. Has it affected my content? Definitely. It absolutely has to. I can't deny one thing, right? And that's what I do. And I really do believe this. I'm very cynical about what I do. But I believe most of what I do on the internet is not about... It's kind of selling opinions that you probably already have. Okay? Now, that is a very cynical approach to how I feel about what I do. But in general, I feel like people watch me and watch others on the internet and supposedly discussion-oriented stuff or, you know, these kinds of podcasty formats because you want to hear someone else saying what you're thinking, but maybe in a slightly different way or a more eloquent way. People don't actually like to be challenged that much. And so the prevailing winds of the community consensus, what the hive mind believes, absolutely affects what I feel comfortable talking about and how cagey I'm talking about it and how regularly I talk about it and stuff like that. Anyone who declares otherwise is, I think, crazy. You know, so, for example, when Fractals very first came out, and there was the huge outrage because Ascended gear had been added to the game, and everyone was absolutely convinced that there was going to be all these gear treadmills in Guild Wars 2 and that they jumped the gun and that they had been lying to you, and it was really, really vitriolic. Like, that really depressed me. That really bummed me out. And it was right around then that I started getting into PvP, and I didn't make videos for, like, right up through that Christmas. And a big part of it was I was just so bummed out and dismayed with how the community felt, and I didn't feel the same way. And it's difficult to get on a crusade every time and you know, fight against something that everyone so ubiquitously believes. And I'm very dried out with that kind of stuff now. I've lived through a lot of those. The people really, really angry that ArenaNet bundled the core game into Heart of Thorns purchases and actively encouraged people to stay away from the first expansion just because of that. And then ArenaNet's pandering to those people by giving the free character slot. I noticed very, very, very much that I really enjoyed the Reddit for a long time until around 2014. So this is a year and a half after the game came out, and people had really started to have their fill, I think. It felt like there was a real flashpoint on the Reddit community when a fairly innocent interview came out with Guildmag, where they talked to, I think it was Colin, maybe? About the Super Adventure Box, which hadn't had an update yet that year. We'd had 2 updates in 2013. 2014 hadn't had one. And in the interview, the devs basically said, no, we're not working on it right now. We're not doing it. And you can disagree with their decision to deprioritize it, right? You can disagree with their assessment of how many people liked it versus how many people didn't. If you guys are out of the loop, Super Adventure Box did very well on release 1, and then the back to school release got super aggressively shouted down, and you might, because it was too difficult and the levels were too long and so on. So the devs never updated it. Now you could disagree with all of that, and that's fine, but the community went bonkers, like truly bonkers, about how outrageous it was that they were never making Super Adventure Box again. That isn't actually what the devs had said. They said they weren't working on it at the time, but people took it to say that the Super Adventure Box was never going to be updated. Unfortunately, I think opinions like that, as much as they were just extrapolating and making it up, they were kind of right in the end. It took ArenaNet a long time to bring the Super Adventure Box back. But I remember that specific incident when that Guildmag article came out, and just the craziness from that. And yeah, you feel it. And I've mentioned many times, this is not to my credit, okay? But I can acknowledge one of my own flaws, I feel, and that is I'm a bit of a boiled frog when it comes to the gem store. I really don't like the gem store. I've never liked the gem store. I have never liked the boosters that they were selling when it very first came out. The gold trading has undermined my enjoyment of acquiring wealth and stuff in this game for years and years and years and years. It's very meaningless to me. I don't like the gem store. I never have. And I'm kind of just like settled with that. I got over that. And so when the devs do, you know, push the line in one way or another, maybe with the build templates this year, maybe with, you know, the mount gate issue the year before where, oh, they were selling mounts for way too much. I'm not so much on the hate train with that. And yeah, I do get thousands of people looking at me and looking for me to get in the boat with them and be angry with them. And it comes up again and again and again. So yes, the community affects me. How I talk about things is always a very, very careful game to play. If I lose the respect of everyone who watches me because I've got too many outrageous opinions and, you know, I'm deceitful about them and stuff, then, you know, why should anyone listen to me? So, you know, it is a game. It is a game, and it is tricky. In general, I try to be as honest as possible. That is what I would say. But, you know, I'm not an idiot, and you do have to think about what the community thinks, and you do have to acknowledge that kind of stuff. Anyway, that's not even the interesting side of the conversation, I think, really. I think the more interesting stuff is, has the community actually changed over 10 years? Let's look at me as like some kind of super old school guy. I don't really think of myself as that. I did an analysis of my demographic last month, just by the way. I found out that something like less than 0.3% of my audience is in the 13 to 17-year-old range, by the way. Less than 1% of you are in the 13 to 17-year-old range. What does that mean? It means most people into Guild Wars probably are, you know, we're in our 20s now. Most of us. Most people are probably quite like me. And, you know, the people that I'm talking to in this video right now, we're probably kind of similar, at least in terms of age. What does that say? Well, that's probably pretty bad for this franchise. You do need kids to get into these games and be enjoying these games to stay relevant. It probably means an awful lot of things, but it also means that my insights here aren't going to be more special than most people. I would suspect that a lot of people listening to me have been here 10 years too, and can make these observations too. But you're asking me specifically, so I may as well. I do not necessarily think that the community's changed that much. You asked me about the Guild Wars 1 forums, for example. So I did use the Guild Wars 1 forums, but I was pretty late to the game when I was using the Guild Wars 1 forums. I wasn't using those forums when Factions was new, or when Nightfall was new, or even when Eye of the North was new. It was only as Eye of the North was like getting on a bit, I started using those forums, and I'd use them for price checks, and I'd use them, you know, maybe to see what people talk about builds to a certain extent. And do you know what I remember of the Guild Wars 1 Guru forums? They were a cesspit. An absolute cesspit. filled with insane, incessant, ungodly whining and crying. And I'll tell you why. It's because most people who had become big fans of Guild Wars at that point were experiencing, I mean, perhaps this term is not correct, but we're experiencing something of a content recession at that point. ArenaNet had already decided that they were going to make Guild Wars 2. This was post Eye of the North. So, you know, the expansion was the bridge between Guild Wars 1 and Guild Wars 2. Guild Wars 2 development ended up taking a lot longer than the devs initially anticipated. The original PC Gamer article talked about the game Guild Wars 2 dropping in 2008. Well, that obviously never happened, right? It ended up getting pushed all the way to 2012. And so you had all these disenfranchised Guild Wars nerds, fans, who didn't have much to play. And what did they look at? They were looking at reputation grind, as they were calling it in the titles from Eye of the North. They were looking at the imbalance of Way as a group comp. You know, it was a lot of just really, really angry, spiteful stuff. And then it was also, you know, little spatterings of people who were incessantly defensive of the studio. Do I think that's any different to how any of you act today? No, I don't. I'm sorry, but really times have not changed that much. I really don't. I see that at any time before a major expansion comes out with Guild Wars 2 or major content release, most of the community feels a lot like how that Guild Wars 1 Guru community was, really. I think that the exception was when press started coming out for Guild Wars 2 and it felt like it was going soon. So it was going to be coming soon. So I feel like there was a period of time shortly after the very first Gamescom trailer. If you guys remember, the first image we had of something Guild Wars 2, I think, was a reflection in the glasses of a community manager at the time, a guy called Martin Kirstein. There was a picture of his face, and in his glasses was reflected the start of the Guild Wars 2 trailer. I kind of think of that as the start of a lot of things. I think there was also a very early blog post dealing with sound effects and the various footstep noises that you can experience in Guild Wars 2 based on the kind of texture you're standing on. That was a random post that they'd thrown out, I think, on the Guild Wars 2 Guru forums. Anyway, once the Guild Wars 2 Guru forums got kicked up, but before the game came out, I feel like that was a very positive and interesting, like, exception. It was a bubble of rampant enthusiasm and wonderment and good-hearted speculation and, you know, just general gamers being enthusiastic about something coming. And it wasn't bagged down or tampered with the restrictions of the real world and the inevitable aspects of these massive products that people would eventually come to the conclusion they don't actually like, you know. Balanced discussions never existed, and balanced discussions are always going to be of a somewhat critical nature, and somewhat, you know, how constructive that criticism is another story, right? But so it was probably true that before Guild Wars 2 actually came out, the Guild Wars 2 Guru forums were an overly optimistic, bright-eyed, interesting place. And yeah, there were some clowns in the community. There were some I remember some people used to post so aggressively and so frequently on the Guild Wars 2 Guru forums. They got really well known, and they wanted the game to be this, like, crazy, like, anime spectacle experience. You could pick them out, and, you know, people would joke about them. But in general, you know, it was just people being enthusiastic and excitable. And in a weird way, I feel like what I've been doing since Guild Wars 2 came out, that's obviously not a 10-year period, but since Guild Wars 2 came out, maybe it was those early Guild Wars 2 Guru experiences that kind of shaped how some of my videos ended up going, you know, where I like to talk about the future a bit more. I think people are more optimistic when you're thinking about what the stories might mean and you're thinking about what the mystery might come to, rather than actually celebrating what was actually added by the studio's talents in the end, right? Which is a whole other story. I would also say that the Reddit was pretty pleasant and pretty decent, probably up until that big Guild Mag experience. And after that, I feel like the official Guild Wars 2 forum community, I feel like the Guild Wars 2 Reddit, and obviously Guild Wars 2 Guru got closed down. These places just kind of returned to what I view as normal video game communities. I don't think that the Guild Wars 2 community is friendlier than any other community. I don't think it ever has been. Wow, we just leveled up and healed ourselves there. I don't think that we're special in any way. I think we're about as toxic or as constructive or as ineloquent as any other community out there, and I think we've trended to about the same place we were at during Guild Wars 1. I think all that ArenaNet needs to do is keep giving you reasons to be excited, and they fail in that duty when they don't work on expansions and when their other projects fail and languish in the background for years and years on end. It's as simple as that, really. I will say, you do mention the wikis. I do think we're special in terms of our wikis. I'll tell you that, all right? And this is something that people don't appreciate. I think that the Guild Wars wikis are probably some of the best wikis I've ever seen in a video game, really. Like, it doesn't take long to play other video games. You realize how terrible their wikis are. And, yeah, I remember back in Guild Wars 1 where there was an official and an unofficial wiki. And when the unofficial wiki kind of went away and we ended up with the official one, I think we've got a really, really solid bedrock here. And anyone who wants to get into the lore and anyone who wants to get this kind of information can use the wiki. I, myself, have always been very reliant on the work of the wiki. The wiki isn't perfect. And sometimes, you know, you might tune in on a stream of mine and you'll hear me whining that people are adding headcanon and making leap, you know, extrapolations and speculations and writing them on the wiki as though they're fact. And there's a lot of idiots out there, frankly, who think that the wiki is the word of the devs, and it's not. And that leads people astray. So there are issues with the wiki, but I think that it's one of the best video game wikis I've ever seen and continues to be. I'm always surprised and happy to see that. No matter how cynical you are, it's like the size of some kind of patch that just released and whether the Guild Wars 2 community might be shrinking or growing, you can always go to the wiki and they're trooping on along there and they get stuff updated and it's always very contemporary and I am forever impressed with that. I think the final dimension of this that I do want to mention is, you know, the facets of the community too. You do mention Discord servers, right? And these are true. And I think that actually, this might seem a bit arrogant of me, but I think YouTube channels, okay, are also relevant. I think those of us who have covered Guild Wars 2 over the years, and many of them are gone now, you know, I'm still here and I'm still happy to be here. But, you know, there's been a wide number of people who, and I expect to outlast them all, frankly. There's been a wide number of people who appear for a while and then they'll go, and you get to see the different kinds of communities that they cultivate, the way they think about the game, the way they talk about the game. I view every video I make as its own, like, forum thread. I really do. And, you know, I go to a lot of effort to make sure that the comments are pleasant to read and do actually give you some information. So, and they're not just, you know, mindless nonsense, which YouTube videos tend to be. I kind of think of us as another forum, as another part of the community. And I think this stuff's pretty interesting too, because you do find these different, like, little echo chambers. Like, I have my own little echo chamber. The people watching me, we all have a certain likelihood, a certain bias to agree with one another for certain reasons. Over the years, we've come to, you know, get an understanding of what the prevailing opinion in this little cell is. But other cells may have different ones. And I do think that it is more possible to find alternate opinions that are convinced they are the only ones, all right? So, like, in a world versus world Discord, it's very easy for an echo chamber to develop that the game is this way, that World versus World was the best perfect bit of the game, and that's like a fact to those people because that's what they interact with all the time. I wonder whether that happens so much in the past in old events and old team speaks, and, you know, these kinds of new social media presences maybe have changed that a little. And I would say also that it's made it very obvious to me that over the years, where I am, as far as the rest of the community is, has changed. What do I mean by that? I mean that if you took 100 users of the Guild Wars 2 Guru forums in the year 2010, and you asked them, what's your opinion on grind? What's your opinion on the Holy Trinity? What's your opinion on energy potions? Or whatever, right? What's your opinion on the dodge roll mechanic? If you took 100 of those guys, and I compared my opinion to them, I probably am aligned with like 90 of them. Right, I am in the same camp as everyone. There's a lot of unity. There's a lot of cohesion and consensus between what everyone's looking for in this MMO and what ArenaNet is selling to you in this MMO. Everyone has that like mind. And I think that the main difference that has occurred over these years is how much that has drifted. There is very little cohesion now, and there is very little unity. If you were to take 100 average Guild Wars 2 players now, and by that I mean people that have played it at any point over the past years since its launch, you're going to get so many different opinions. You ask 100 people, you're going to get 99 different views about what the game was good at, what the game was bad at, and these are all going to be dogmatic, line in the sand absolutes. People won't be able to juggle multiple perspectives that, okay, maybe the Holy Trinity was needing to be emphasized more, or maybe it wasn't, or maybe fractals did kill the game, or maybe dungeons were what killed the game, or maybe not dealing with PvP is what killed the game, blah, 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 blah. And it's always phrased with this idea, killed the game, by the way, right? And I think that there's so much disarray there, it's unreal. I think MMOs invite that disarray, and if I were to make an MMO, having watched what's happened with ArenaNet over all these years, I think that idea of selling one vision in one product is something I would really pay attention to. because without that cohesion, you lead all these people just feeling kind of lost, honestly. And indeed, I feel that too. This whole question you asked me about how I feel compared to the rest of the community, I feel very estranged from them sometimes. Very estranged. Going back way back to like that 2014 experience. And more over time, my experiences in the game are differing from yours, always. And more and more, I have to be more careful about what is the average person. You know, do I really have an understanding of the economy since I started Guild Wars 2 Master 11 months ago, 10 months ago? Probably I am starting to drift. Do I really have a good understanding do you have a good understanding of the early game experiences compared to me? The answer is probably no, right? I've spent probably way more time leveling new characters and thinking about the personal story and experiencing the personal story and experiencing the level mechanisms. I probably have a very good grip on exactly how they feel in 2020 compared to you that did it, in 2015? And I'm obsessed with those areas of the game now, and I'm obsessed with tutorialization, and I'm obsessed with getting new players in. Meanwhile, you're just thinking about raid balance. And I find you very narrow-minded and very foolish in that. You know, I play a lot of PvP. You think you can talk to me about balance? You don't know anything about balance because all you do is play fractals. You know, and I can feel that way. I feel very estranged, and we're all playing the same game. And that's going to happen over time. It'd take a killer MMO to really figure out how to fix that. So yeah, I think the community is in more disarray than ever I've seen before. But in terms of general toxicity or intelligence or all those things, we're the same, man. And in terms of other MMO communities and other video game communities in general, we're not special, we're not different. That's how I feel, 10-year perspective. And thanks for the amazing question, really. All right, moving on. I'm really sorry that person got a massive answer and some of you other guys won't. But, you know, he did basically just bait me into a 20-minute conversation there. I think that one's really interesting. Anyway, Sealreth says, I just decided to give you a pledge. Thank you very much. I've been enjoying your content for so long now, and I really appreciate the extreme length you go to for your videos. Here's for help for 2020. Question, do you think you'd enjoy playing Terraria? Actually, yes. And I'll tell you what, I've tried Terraria a few times. But for the first time that I actually really understood it and got into it was last year. No joke. I know that they've got some kind of big expansion coming out this year, I think. Terraria has a thing where they do an expansion that's going to be like the last expansion, and then it's not, and then it's going to be the last, and then it's not, or whatever. I believe they had some big project that failed or something. I'm not a massive expert on Terraria, but I did play it. I did enjoy it. I've mentioned many times that my perfect MMO, in terms of like creating one from a low budget standpoint, would actually be a side-scrolling MMO. I've believed in that for years, ever since my origins playing games like MapleStory and Soul Saver Online. But it was the recent excursion playing Terraria that really fueled my enthusiasm for side-scrolling RPG as a format. I think Terraria did a lot of really interesting things. It's a beautiful game. I like it a lot. I have played it. I'll probably play it when the new expansion came out. I even played some kind of mod that added loads of extra bosses. Do I think Terraria has problems? Yes. Do I have plans to make videos about Terraria? No. Sorry, but I've got so many ideas and so many things I want to do. Terraria is just not very high on the list right now. Again, it's that thing. I feel like I'm too late to the pie on that one. But yeah, Terraria was extremely inspiring to me. And I do recommend people give it a shot, like a serious shot, because there's a lot you can learn about video games there. Next, we've got a question from Stephen Dupont, who says, what are your favorite Guild Wars 1 and Guild Wars 2 skill icons? All right, I did 2 videos. Maybe he's just saying this so that I'll plug it. If you go over to Wood and Potatoes 2, guys, my second channel, usually it's just Twitch VODs that go up there, all right? But if you have a look on the actual channel page, instead of most recent updates, but you look at like the playlist and stuff, you'll find there's a playlist there of like special miscellaneous videos I've done over the years. There are 2 videos where I am reviewing the best and the worst Guild Wars 1 skill icons. So have fun. It's over there. They're fun videos. I genuinely do like them. I don't know why I put them on the second channel in the end. I should have put them on the main. As for Guild Wars 2 skill icon reviews, I don't know. I've thought about it a few times. This one's pretty good. Heartseeker. It's a heart being like pierced. So I don't know, we'll see. There's a lot of icons in Guild Wars 2 though. I can tell you one of the ones I hate the most, and that's the little rabbit icon you get so often when you pick up a consumable in the game. It just feels so weird and mismatched to me. I don't want to be looking at a rabbit down there to represent that I get a bit of swiftness when I pick the thing up. But maybe that keys into some design about the access of movement speed modifiers in Guild Wars 2 being pretty power crept, so now it feels like you need swiftness all the time no matter what you're holding. Anyway, that's a whole other story. As for the icons, maybe we'll look into it one day. Next, we got a question from Umbra, who says, have you thought about diving deeper into a different game that you hold in a similar appreciation for? Thinking long term, while I do wish Gw2 alone would be a single stable pillar for your content, would you consider trying out a new horizon to see if your core audience stick with you and support you? Maybe capturing a larger audience even. What games or interests do you wish you could upload to the main channel and be successful with? So this is kind of the question that I spent 2 hours talking about in the VOD, the VOD last month. If you guys missed that, please feel free to check it out. You've obviously seen that I've kicked up Elder Scrolls, which is one of those big projects. I love the Elder Scrolls, I really do, and I wish I was a bigger fan of it, and I feel like I've been with it for a long time. I like the idea of doing a chronology. We'll talk about Elder Scrolls more in an upcoming question. I have a 20-episode series that I hope you guys watch. It's going up in a couple of, and it's not Elder Scrolls. It's not any game you've ever seen me play before. And I'm a massive fan of that game, and I've done some very cool things with it. I feel like, and I should tell you the series is amazing, and it is worth watching. I would never put anything on the channel that's not worth watching. But I feel like the videos never came out as good as I imagined them to in the end. You'll see as you watch why that might be. But yeah, there's loads of games. I'm timid to tell you about them because I don't want anything to be misconstrued. I don't want to have a comment in 7 months of someone saying, WP, where's your Terraria playthrough? You told me in March that you were going to do it. But that really irritates me. I don't want to disappoint any of you, and frankly, I think a lot of you misinterpret speculation for promises. Okay, not just from me, but from studios, anything. I think people have very, very, very limited intellectual capacity to understand modality and certainty. Okay, so I don't know how many different things I've got that will become games, but I've got a lot of them, and a big part of 2020 is to embrace those. So I hope when you see them, you'll go for them. I've kind of got my feelers out at the moment to see what people actually will watch. I have to say, interestingly, last month with the Elder Scrolls starting, plus Living World Season 2 starting, I expected the Elder Scrolls to do better than Living World Season 2. Now, I expected that because very few people were interested in Corteria. And Season 2 has all the problems with Corteria in terms of being old. And my memory of Season 2 was people loathing Season 2. And you have the sudden swap to all these characters that people love complaining about. People love complaining about Marjorie and Casimir and, oh, why are they lesbian? This stupid pandering. And people love complaining about Timey. I love complaining about Timey. And people love complaining about Scarlet. And these are all big storylines in Season 2. And, you know, as someone who experienced Season 2 as it come out, and I also experienced all the complaints about lack of content, I would have thought that a lot of people weren't that into it. But a lot of you are watching Season 2, a lot more than even the Elder Scrolls thing. So, you know, I'm paying attention to stuff like that. And, you know, that is going to have to influence me because I am trying to earn a living here. I'm not just trying to earn a living, I'm trying to stop sliding backwards. As I mentioned in the vlog, let's not turn this into a pity pie. So, yes, I'm thinking about it. And I'm going to hold off a couple of the names of games. You'll see it, you're literally in, like, tomorrow, you're going to see a new one. And it will just be one of many. You also ask here, do you have any plans for doing more games like New World or just upcoming MMOs in general? I know you mentioned the possibility of swapping out a week of the schedule for more generic MMO coverage, and although you've done a couple of videos on New World, I'd love to see your opinion on it now that it's nearing release. So I guess this question was asked before I produced New World video. So yeah, last month I hadn't planned it, but I did actually dedicate a week to generic MMO coverage, and I've only uploaded a couple of those videos. I think I have a video where I talk to you guys about my full MMO history, and I've been scared to post it. I think I will do it, and people on Patreon have seen it if you've got access to the drive already. But hopefully that'll be entertaining, and I'm just going to see how people feel watching it. One of the natural things is a lot of you guys who watch me like MMOs, so maybe I should talk about MMOs more. But I only want to talk about MMOs I care about, and so we're going to be a little bit more limited on that. I'm very excited about the upcoming LOTRO MMO. The streams we did on the already LOTRO MMO were fun. We'll see how it goes. Next, we've got a question from Clayton, who says, not sure if I get to ask a second question, but I was wondering if you plan on carrying the Elder Scrolls series past the 5 main games, like some of the side games, like Redguard, and more interestingly to me, Elder Scrolls Online, which would be quite the endeavor, even just to do a story-focused playthrough, since there's so many stories to be told. Right, now, ESO, I'm not sure. It's kind of perfect because it's an MMO, and if people like my coverage of Elder Scrolls, cool. I think that the verdict is still out on Elder Scrolls because I'm playing Arena at the moment and people don't like games from the early 90s. I'll just remind you guys, and this isn't in self-interest, this is because I genuinely believe it. Good games are good games forever. I know that some games have clunky controls. I know that some games have awful, like, representation. And, you know, their graphics are poor or whatever. But you acclimate to all that stuff. And you will immerse yourself in what the game was trying to do at the time it was trying to do it. Even in the year 2080, you will be able to play Elder Scrolls Arena and get a sense of what the devs were going for. Okay, maybe that late, you're going to start losing even more context. But still, these things, you will get value out of them. So I'm not scared to go back and play old stuff, but I know a lot of people are leery. Later, when we get to the newer stuff, we'll see how people really feel about me covering the Elder Scrolls, because, you know, it's like, well, are you going to actually watch Wood and Potatoes play Skyrim? Well, I guess we'll see. And the same is true for Elder Scrolls Online. I'm actually kind of excited about Elder Scrolls Online, just for one reason. They did something like the Living World in that game, but it's smarter than what ArenaNet did with their Living World, and let me tell you why. Guild Wars 2's Living World is one long chain of events. Now, that's amazing for super nerds like me that have followed it the whole time. But that's very poor for new people. The new people can't just play POF and like get a good sense for it, because they start off coming down off of Season 3. So if you go back to the end of Season 3, well, but now I need to play Flashpoint. And it's like a long daisy chain all the way back. And it's gems all the way. Elder Scrolls kind of does this, Elder Scrolls Online, but each one is its own separate little story that aren't like necessarily chronologically trailing into one another. So it gives them all these fresh starting points that makes the game very accessible to someone just getting in. And that accessibility, I feel, quite palpable. And it puts the MMO on the table for me. As far as I understand, there are some things that chronologically roll in and out of one another. And maybe I would have to do those. The truth is I haven't really looked into it right now because it is, like you say, a big endeavor. That's just ESO. Let's talk about some of these others. You guys might not know, but there's like phone games from the mid-2000s and all kinds of weird other projects. You guys might not realize this, but after Daggerfall finished, right, that's just Elder Scrolls 2, right, still in the 90s, they actually made 3 games at once, all right? Morrowind was being made in tandem with 2 other games. It's just all these other Elder Scrolls products people don't think about. I like the idea of doing them all. I have to say. I like the idea of getting the full picture. I don't know. I like completing things. In terms of like collecting everything, I want you to have the full perspective. I want you to be like, okay, this is what Arena was. This was everything to know about Arena. Here's where Elder Scrolls was. It's like you're in the 90s again. And then boom, you're playing the very next thing and you're getting the full picture. In a way that you've never had before. In the way even a nerd originally living it in the 90s probably didn't, because they might not have had the right console or system to play this other thing. I love that stuff. There has to be a line in the sand somewhere, though, because, you know, there's like novels. What do? You finish a game and then you watch the exact next thing in the franchise. Okay, it was this novel. Now we're going to do an audiobook of this novel. Now we're going to move forward. You know, you have to draw a line in the sand somewhere. But as far as their video game products, right now, I like the prospect. It all depends how complicated the games are. The side games, because they are even more obscure, right? Like, I like it. I feel like it lends strength to the series to cover everything. But the more obscure stuff starts to get, you know, I'm grabbing on to whoever I can right now, you know? Can I convince you to watch a game from the early 90s? That's a hard enough sell. At least it's a main series Elder Scrolls game. Can I convince you to watch a random, well, not a random, but, you know, an even more obscure game from the early 2000s that really has little relevance and everyone knows is non-canonical at this point or whatever. Can I convince you to do that? That's even harder. So it really, and I hate to say this, it kind of comes down to the viewership to a certain extent, but I'd like to do the whole thing. And it comes down to how complicated the games are. If it's like a simple little dungeon crawler, and my understanding is some of these are very much just dungeon crawlers, then cool, we can do it. If it's some kind of PvP-oriented thing where the servers aren't going anymore, you know, just to pull a completely random example out of the hat, maybe it's not possible. Is it a game every bit as complicated and wild as one of the main series games, but just super bug-laden with terrible documentation? Well, that probably lowers the chance as well, because I do need to get on to the next one. So, you know, I don't want to do 1,000 videos on really awful random stuff if I can help it. But can I do mini-series? That would be pretty good. And it's also, you know, my style, I kind of like look things up before I play them. So how much do I have to look up before I cover this game? Do I have to know anything? Do I just do it totally blind? Do my mini-series on the side projects are blind? Well, that might be fun. So yeah, I've been thinking about it all. I love that you asked the question, because again, it shows that we're all on the same lines here. So, next question, David Mason. Hey WP, I thought your new method of productivity, of committing yourself to one topic per week, is really interesting. I was interested to hear more about your work ethic. Do you struggle with procrastination? What are your methods for committing yourself to your projects? I think I do procrastinate. I think I procrastinate so much that I can't imagine a human that doesn't. I feel like it's the natural state of human existence to procrastinate sometimes. But I heard a quote recently. I can't remember what the hell the context was or who said it. But maybe it wasn't a quote, maybe it was just a statistic. But the idea was that most people procrastinate because of anxiety. And I never realized it until I heard this. This was a few months ago, but it's totally true about me. When I'm procrastinating, it's because I have anxiety. So I used to procrastinate a lot at school. And looking back, it's because there was no enjoyment in the work that I was doing, because I was so concerned about the grades, and I was so concerned about the deadline, and I was so there was no fun in it, so I don't want to do it. It's not actual laziness. It's not that you just want to be idle all the time. It's that there's like some fear and there's some, negative association with the task that you're avoiding. And for me, it's anxiety that comes from that. So when I was at school and I would be late with my homework or cram it out at the last second, stupidly, because I have a dumb monkey brain, a tight deadline makes me more likely to procrastinate, because if I stop and think about the thing that has to be done, that makes me think about the deadline for the thing that has to be done, and now I'm not happy, so it's much easier to train my brain to not think about doing it in the first place. Easy procrastination, right? And I think when it comes to YouTube, if I'm procrastinating with work, it tends to be anxiety that's done that as well. And mostly what it is an insecurity that I'm not going to create stuff that's good enough for you guys. I know that sounds sad and that sounds like an easy excuse or whatever, but I really do feel that a lot. Like this 20 video series you're going to see coming out in the next couple of weeks. I think that I'm nervous about it, and I'm nervous about like these variety MMO videos that I've already made and have procrastinated uploading, because I don't know if they're going to go well. And, you just kind of, I'm in an R-in. And the funny thing is, the longer you leave it, the more your current day opinion will have drifted from the one that's being espoused in the video, because you made it a couple of weeks ago, and, things get even worse. So, yeah, I do procrastinate. What I'm trying to do is just be a more confident person, pretty much, really. And, just put my balls on the table and say, look, this is who I am. This is what I do. I'm trying to, grow up, basically, get older, go through your 20s, and hopefully change and become a more assertive person. I do kind of believe that, confidence is like a good 85% of existing on Earth. It will lead you to jobs and opportunities you never would have taken otherwise, and it will help you with your very work ethic. I love what I do, and when I'm into it and I'm not scared, I'll go crazy with it. These videos that you're going to see, and genuinely, I've made about 20 hours of stuff for you guys. I have put ungodly hours into. I was actually making mods and coding relentlessly for the past 3 weeks, teaching myself a whole new skill set, really. Now, I'm not good, okay? I've got a long way to go, just to prepare this, and it was fun the whole time, and I could pull long hours on it. And in fact, all 20 hours of content I produced, and right now it's Monday night, the new week has just started, I produced since Saturday. I'm not joking. I've just been flat out, and I love it, and I don't feel slightly burnt out or anything. But that's because I'm happy and I'm not anxious about it. But a lot of other stuff, I get anxious, and that's where I procrastinate. So that's my main hurdle, I would say. But yeah, the idea of focusing on one topic a week, just allowing me to indulge enthusiasm for something, it's worked really well so far. It really has, and I recommend it to anyone. I don't know. I think working in batches and feeling done, it's good. It's much better than juggling balls. I'm not good at juggling too many balls in the air at all, because I'll lose focus. I don't have a good concept for divided attention. And it's worked well so far. Worked well in January. And February, I didn't have the discipline to stop at the end of the week. I just kept coding and coding and coding and doing this thing. But aside from that discipline issue, I think it has been productive. Definitely, it's been good. Next, Oxypat. Since this is a Q&A, here's my question. Have you set some smart goals and specific milestones about your new approach? Something like number of subs, view hours, Patreon income, I'm wondering what your definition of success is here, apart from don't do another 2018 or 19. Follow-up question, have you considered going back to doing YouTube as a side hustle? Would it be more enjoyable if you could focus on the games and less on the business side of YouTube? So that second question is really interesting because I don't do what I do because I want to be having fun all the time. I don't believe that there is such a thing as a job where that's true. Like, let's say you love pizza, right? So you go work at a pizza place. You're not going to like pizza after a while. You're just not going to. I think you're setting up for failure if you believe in that old adage of, like, you know, work a hobby and you'll never work a day in your life. I think that there are things that can be a drudgery and, you know, unideal, and no matter what you're doing, and you're just gonna have to go through it. So I would rather just be disciplined enough to push through that kind of stuff, you know, motivation issues, or, you know, is it really fun audio editing? Not necessarily. But do I want to be proud of what I've created at the end? Yes, so I do it. And I'm doing it not because I'm having fun, but because I'm motivated to make something that I will think is good. You know, that is what it is more than anything else. So, you know, the idea of, oh yeah, go get another job that will pay the bills, and then it can be just about the fun, that doesn't really factor into it for me. I would absolutely and will absolutely get another job and do something else if I have to be an adult. Right, if I'm too bad at this and I'm a failure at this, you know, I have to take my licks and I have to be an adult and I have to go do that. But I would do that out of necessity rather than the dream of, you know, trying to make this something it's not to me. There are definitely compromises. This series you're about to see didn't turn out as good as I wanted it to in certain elements, you'll see. And I wish I could just say, all right, I'll scrap it all. I'll scrap all 20 hours. I'll re-record the whole thing. I genuinely would wish I could do that. But I can't leave you all hanging, you know, I have to put something out at some point. So you make compromises, and I'm happy enough with that, and I think that's okay. The other part of the question, setting smart goals. I'm not actually sure what you mean by setting a smart goal, but the idea of metrics-based success, where I'm actually following stats, I think that would depress the hell out of me. Never once in the past 10 years, it's not 10 years yet, it's 9 years, but never once have I set myself up to be like, I need X subs, I need X views, I need X donations, I need X people in the Discord. I think that would crush me. But that kind of cutthroat, I'm here because I need to be growing and I need to be making bank, feels very insincere and deceptive to me. I would rather be cultivating something that's more than that. Something that's more about the art, something that's more about the pursuit of the discussion itself, something that's more about the celebration of the content itself. I don't want the content to be there to drive growth. I want the growth to allow the content to be there. Does that make sense? Like, really, I'm more content first than that. If I get 2 hours to work in a day, and that was it, there is no way in earth I would spend that making thumbnails and tags and looking at my analytics and all that BS, because the growth is not the thing I'm looking for as much as I'm looking to create the art or the discussion or to present the information. I'm genuinely serious about that, and that probably will lead me to be a less successful person over my life. But at least I'm not some corporate, you know, I don't know, grubbing for the viewership and stuff. I think that's also why I don't really like joining the bandwagons as much as other people do. And yeah, I don't know. It's that whole horrendously trite loser tortured artist conversation, isn't it, really? And that's a pretty ridiculous thing to think about yourself when what you're doing is making videos about games on the internet. But there you have it. I'm a tortured artist, guys. Enjoy. Next, we've got Cletus, who says, hey WP, in your Guild Wars 2 Let's Play, I noticed you were super accurate, triggering just the skills you wanted, complete with perfectly timed weapon swaps. I tried to figure out your control setup, but I couldn't because most of the places on the UI that have that key or mouse press just had ... Could you go over your control setup? Yeah, you should see that right here on this video here, like ... under Heart Seeker and ... under Double Strike, Lotus Strike, and Wild Strike. Even ... under the Signet of Malice. This is the game. I don't know why ArenaNet never really set this up. It seems like it would be pretty trivial. Presenting a numpad designation for a hotkey, and it doesn't know how to display that on the UI at this UI scale. Like, it will show the S and the C under some of my utilities, but it doesn't know how to show other binds. It doesn't know how to show left shift as well, I think. Like, my first utility skill is actually on left shift, but it says ... this here, that's left shift. It shows equals. So why that is because they're all on the numpad. And they're all on the numpad because I'm using a Logitech G600. I thoroughly recommend one. You don't need one to play Guild Wars 2. That's going to be a horrible answer for you to hear because you're going to think, oh man, I don't want to have to go buy some hardware, especially if you're quite young. I mean, I doubt you're young because, like I say, having realized what my demo is the other day, I realized so few of you guys are actually below 17. But anyway, the fact is I'm using a mouse that has lots of numpad assignments. And I have a full video that I did very recently, just in the last half year, all about my keybinds. In fact, the entire time I've been on YouTube, I've avoided doing a keybind video because I just couldn't imagine it being that entertaining. And I made one in the last 6 months, so you should just go check that out. Type Wooden Potatoes keybinds in YouTube. I'm sure it will come up. Lots of people found it useful. I'm sure you would too, given that you've asked that question. Good luck. Next, we have a question from Brett. Hey WP, glad to hear you've got a plan to diversify, revamp the channel. I'm looking forward to it very much. My question is this: have you considered eventually doing a Let's Play on the Halo series? As it's now coming to PC, perhaps even the Destiny games, as they have great lore and some great content. Either way, I'm glad to see you making changes. This is a brilliant question. The big video I did last month, the like 2-hour discussion about everything I want to do, has some little comments in there that I thought people would pick up on and ask me about, and people didn't. People were amazing, so supportive. It's unreal. Like the response I got to that is nothing like I could have ever imagined, and you guys were so wonderful. Like, I got way more than I deserved in terms of kind sentiments and niceties, and these huge walls of text. I read them all. I really did. But none of you really like read between the lines on certain bits. One of them, just this was only a small thing, but I was talking about how like I was at a crossroads when I very first started YouTube. I had a road on the middle, I had a road on the left, I had a road on the right. I went down the middle, that was Guild Wars. Now I want to go on the left and see Elder Scrolls. The right was Halo. I mean, really. I mean, no one really asked me about that. I'm sure some of you know this because I've talked about it a few times before. But I used to be a big Halo fan, and not just because of the gameplay, but because of the world building and the lore and the stories. Particularly, I think the Bungie era Halo experiences, right up until Reach, and including Reach, were very, very, very exciting to me. And sort of the stinger they had as the Chief drifted in orbit of this new alien world at the end of Halo 3 was very, very thrilling. The terminals from Halo 3 blew my mind. I was really into so much of that stuff. Fell out of love with the franchise, though, as time went on. You know, I started covering Guild Wars, and I could have easily been a Halo YouTuber. Easily could have been. And, you know, I'd be very excited about Infinite and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's coming out on PC. I have an old friend that I wanted to play it with, and I haven't got round to in the end. I'm not even sure how much stuff of the MCC's come out on Steam yet. Is it still just Halo? Is it still just some Reach stuff? I guess we'll see one day. Right now, it's not a big plan. I've got a lot of other plans. Halo isn't on there, I'm afraid. But I like the idea. As for Destiny, I'm not a fan at all. I got roped with my old Guild Wars 2 guild. I think we ended up playing one of the betas. I really didn't enjoy myself. And I really don't hear too much great about Destiny, and I'm not sure I'm too into the format of the game. I might end up being one day, but it's that thing of I'm not really invested in it at the moment. So do I want to make videos for you? Well, of course not, because I'm not invested in it. But yeah, I mean, maybe I could have ended up falling in with all that and seen what Bungie did with Destiny. It sounds like they kind of dropped the ball to me, though, from my uninformed, foolish opinion on the outside. Next question is from Nervacat. Do you like cartoons or anime? I'm not against cartoons or anime necessarily, but I don't identify as an anime watcher in any way. And I get a little bit irritated with like anime watchers, not because I disparage the content itself. I've seen a few anime over the years, just a few. Not because I think that it's necessarily a bad art form. It's not that I think it's easy, you know, the kind of art form that is narrow enough you could dismiss instantly. I actually heard someone make a pretty good argument to me on one of my recent streams that the reason they find anime quite interesting is because of how it's produced and the kind of budgets you can get away with there. You can do really interesting and weird stuff narratively that you don't really find in other places. And so there's a certain bar of artistry that you can find in anime productions that makes it worthwhile keeping an eye on. And I probably believe in that. I think that all sounds very well and good. So there's nothing wrong with that. The only thing that irritates me about anime is the weird kind of like insular, like little cult-like viewpoint, a lot of people who really bring that into their personality end up espousing. So what I mean is, like, if someone calls themselves a fan of anime, like, they really bring it into their whole personality, and they are obsessively into it, which I can believe in, I can agree with. But there's like these, as someone on the outside of it, I often have these interactions with people where they'll say, "Are you into anime?" And I'll say, "Oh yeah, I watched Code Geass a few years ago." And they'll say, "Oh yeah, Code Geass is good. You should watch X. You should watch Y. You should watch Z. You should watch A. You should watch B." And then another guy will pipe up and he'll say, "Oh yeah, and you should watch C. And you should watch D." It's like they're collecting trading cards. And people don't really seem to have conversations about anime, it seems to me, in a casual sense. Most of my interactions, it's people just list off shows. They don't really say much. They don't really sell much. They just list them off like it's a little collection, like it's some weird little consumer oddity. And I don't identify or get any of that. So yeah, I don't really think of myself as an anime person. And I do have this weird like bias against anime, heads, let's say, which I wish wasn't there because I don't want to, be prejudiced against people in any way. But it's true. I do feel a bit iffy about it. As for just generic cartoons, I mean, sure, who doesn't like cartoons? I'm tempted to tell you about how I'm quite a big fan of the DCAU just to get some geek cred here. But there's also a big part of me that screams not to, so I won't go into a big discussion about that. But yeah, I like cartoons. I grew up watching a hell of a lot of cartoons. Probably watched too many juvenile cartoons for too long. But hey, there you have it. Let's move on. We got Terry Yan, who asked a couple of questions. One of them's kind of a repeat, so I'll go with this. They say, "I'm going through the Ghost of Ascalon series. This is the audiobook I produced last month. While I really enjoy and appreciate them, I do find your voice is a little squeaky. Still, your delivery of the Asura is really spot on. Best clag ever. I do believe..." I'm going to stop suiciding in this map now. Let's go to another one, by the way. "I do believe you will be an excellent voiceover actor for the Asura. Even more Kodan child role. Like the roasted baby Kodan, here's hoping. So here's my question. Have you received such a proposal from ArenaNet, and would you accept it if you got one?" You're asking me if I would do voice acting. First of all, yeah, I get it. My voices are probably a bit squeaky. I don't know what it is, but I'm kind of a squeaky voice person, let's be honest. If you look back at my original videos, I've got like this deep kind of, I don't know, like brooding, thicker British accent. If I could change my voice back to how it was when I started YouTube, I probably would. But here's my squeaky voice that I am now, and I'm proud of it. And it's there in the audiobook. Bit of a shame, especially when I voice a lot of the women. I don't know how to do a woman's voice. I don't know how. If you asked me to do a scene of like 6 different women talking to each other, and there's very little like exposition as to who's saying what, and you're just meant to infer from the dialogue lines, that is my nightmare for an audiobook. That would be so difficult to do. I can barely give you 2 separate voices. In fact, if you listen to the audiobook I produced, Riona's opening voice sounds a lot more distinct than her closing voice. Her closing voice in those later chapters, she sounds a lot like Colleen's voice. But it's okay, because by the time Colleen dies, they'll never be in a scene together, so I can just make Riona sound like Colleen. And, I wish I didn't do that, but that's kind of how it ended up, and I noticed that when I was in editing. So I'm not confident with that stuff. And I have to say, there's the whole female thing, but the other thing is the Asura. I was basically doing, like, I don't know what accent it is. I don't know what region of the world it is. But I was doing some kind of American accent for the Asura there. For Clag, any Asura we interacted with, right? And that is something I'm very scared of, because I don't know how to do an American accent. I don't even know what it is I'm emulating there. I'm just sort of trying to do the voice a little bit like I hear in the game. So I'm really happy and relieved to hear you actually liked that Asura voice, because that voice is the voice I was more scared of than anything else. Yeah, if I'm doing an attempt at a woman, it might sound a bit cartoony and squeaky and stupid. But if I'm doing some horribly cringy, like totally off Asuran accent that sounds a bit like some weird American accent that doesn't really exist, that could have been bad. That could have killed the whole audiobook. No one complained about it, and here you are outright complimenting it, so that, that blows my mind. I'm happy to hear that. Would I do it actually for ArenaNet in Guild Wars 2? I mean, yeah, it would be a dream come true. I would love to do that. I'd even do that pro bono, right? Like, there's so many cool things I would do just because I'm a fan of the game, I'm not looking for pay. I would just love to have something in there. However, I think that this would never happen because, and the devs talked about this on one of their streams, if you want to voice act for Guild Wars 2, you need to be a member of the, it's not the Screen Actors Guild, right? But there's like a voice actors club. There's a voice acting equivalent. The Voice Actors Guild, the VAG, is that a thing? I don't know. But you have to be a part of some society that I'm sure these various talents pay premiums to be in and blah, blah, blah. And then you're allowed to do it. And whoever they, like, collaborate with to get their voice work done, that's like a stipulation. You know, all stuff like this. There's all these little annoying hoops that you have to jump through and you have to pay money to do. So it stops randoms like me being able to have opportunities like that. I'm sure that's good. I'm sure the industry is built in the way that it is for some good reasons. So I'm not going to, you know, pillory against it. But that's kind of the situation. I could not, and they would never ask me to because of that. And I have been asked this several times before. And my go-to answer usually, if I was actually going to voice act for the game, if I really had that opportunity, maybe a male Sylvari, because I wouldn't actually have to change my voice very much. Or I'd like to do an Etin. I'd like to just be like, "Ooh, me, angry." Like grunt into a microphone. And it doesn't matter how I sound or what I do, because I'm given a couple of syllables and that's it. And yeah, we could do that. Also, I like the idea of, you know, the idea you're doing an Asura suggests you actually, you know, there's a sense of intellectualism there that I'm sure I do not actually carry. I like the idea of being just a dumb brute. That'd be good. Next, we have a question from a Lethal Pineapple, who says, I know you're doing a Let's Play on the Elder Scrolls. That's going to take some time, but once that's over and you're done, and you have time with the game, you explore other LPs in the same fashion as Elder Scrolls. I'd love to have a series from you explaining lore and admiring the game in your own WP way, like a game like Hollow Knight, Ori and the Blind Forest, The Witcher, the full franchise, Divinity, the full franchise, not just Original Sin. And it'll be fun to watch from you. Just wondering if you have a list of games you want to explore or are really committed to the Elder Scrolls for the foreseeable future. Either way, I'm super excited to see how your channel grows and all the content you make. Well, look, I'm sure I would like The Witcher, okay? I'm sure that I would really like the Dark Souls. People talk to me about Souls all the time. Hollow Knight, I've actually read a bit about in the past. Sounds like good. I've actually played a bit of Ori. I don't really think that that's deep in the way that I could make good videos about. And yeah, sure, I'd like all of them, but here's a simple fact, guys. My style, getting to grips and going deep with something, all right, that doesn't just happen and then end easily. I can't say I will do this for Elder Scrolls and then I'll do The Witcher for you, don't worry, and then I'll do this thing, because what we're talking about is multiple years of commitment there. Like, this Elder Scrolls thing, guys, this is 2020. Okay, what you're asking me here is, what are you going to do in 2021? Do I really want to sit here and lock myself into something? I don't, I'm sorry. The Elder Scrolls, you can sit there and say, oh yeah, I'll just watch a few videos. For me, this is like properly doing these big playthroughs behind the scenes, poring over their wikis, finding out what I really like about them, finding out the cool trivia, learning the environment that they were developed in, and then doing some kind of cool guided gameplay series that I'm proud of for you. And it's going to take a long time. It's like a long commitment. But, you know, I'm not going to just sit here and blue sky guess at stuff I might do way down the line. It all depends. The game has to be kind of big enough and interesting enough that I really like it and there's a lot we can get out of it. But also, that it's doable. You know, if I look back at my Azaric stuff or I look back at my Grimrock, these games are not actually that big. But I help to show you how much is in there anyway. And we can be done after a little while. And I'm just as open to stuff like that, maybe even more so, than I am more epically large franchises, okay? I've put one epically large franchise on the table here, The Elder Scrolls. I'm not going to put like 3 or 4. This next thing you're going to see over the next couple of weeks is 20 parts and it's done. And then if I come back to it, it can be 20 parts and done. And if I come back, it can be 20 parts and it's done. So I would rather look at stuff like that than these big things. As for Divinity, Divinity's really fun. I like it a lot. I played the Original Sins 1 and 2. But I don't see them as things I would do YouTube videos on, probably. I played most of them co-op. I actually prefer Divinity 1 much more than Divinity 2. I think I'm going to have another question about that in just a minute. I alluded to it earlier, so let's just keep going. Next, Arundel said, "Hey WP, I'm quite excited to be beginning to explore some other franchises again, but even more that you're genuinely enthusiastic about it. Your enjoyment of a game series is absolutely infectious, and that sort of passion is really something the community needs, especially in the current climate. My question is, what's the first game you remember really going all in on, wanting to immerse yourself in completely, sussing out every bit of minutia? Mine was strangely probably The Secret Paths in the Forest by Purple Moon, a small game, but it spoke to my little child self in a way that made gaming begin to feel welcoming in a way it hadn't for me yet." That's an amazing question that I'm answering most of these off the top of my head as I'm going here. I can't answer off the top of my head. The first thing I want to say is Final Fantasy X, which you've obviously seen me cover already a couple of years ago now. But I don't think that can be right. Final Fantasy X is a PlayStation 1 game. I remember being ludicrously obsessed with that. I think that was my first big obsession, if that makes sense. But I'm sure I was obsessed with other games en route, or on the way up. But a lot of the things that I experienced when I was younger were like secondhand. I didn't really have a console for a long time. We weren't very wealthy. So what I experienced mostly was secondhand, watching other people play games or being at other people's houses. I'll tell you what, probably Generation 1 Tomb Raider stuff on the PlayStation 1. TR1, TR2, TR4, TR3. Probably those games were my first big obsessions. Then Final Fantasy started creeping in a bit later, and I don't know, we'll see. But yeah, I think some stuff like that. As for the games you mentioned, I don't even know what those are. Secret Paths in the Forest by Purple Moon? I'm not sure what that is. I actually have a list on my PC of all my old nostalgia trips as games, and there's definitely a lot of massive nostalgia bomb games I have, and might show to you guys one day. I think that would be cool. Those would be like the smaller kind of projects I was talking about. But whether they're actually good games or it's just because of nostalgia, I don't know. I mean, every single video I end with music from Little Big Adventure 2. That is the ultimate nostalgia bomb game to me, and I was definitely obsessed with that game. But I don't know whether that came a little bit later. So anyway, yeah. Ale says, "Hey WP, a question about the branching out of gaming interest coverage. I think I heard you mention on streams more than once that you played Divinity Original Sin 2. I never heard, though, your thoughts about it. What do you think of its combat, its story, the overall RPG experience? How far did you get with it? As a side note, I really think the combination of your enthusiasm for lore and interest really predisposed you to cover complex RPGs well. With the recent revival D&D and deprived products are having, it's quite an exciting time for RPG lovers." Yeah, people keep talking to me about Baldur's Gate, which I have some old memories of, and obviously Larian is making the new one. It looks like there's a big old hype train going on with that, certainly, doesn't it, right now? I'm not sure that I've got the space for that, but yeah, it's an interesting one. As for Divinity, I really like Divinity Original Sin. I thought it was really well made. I thought it was pretty robust. My actual favorite experience with that was playing it co-op before the Enhanced Edition came out. If you guys don't know, this is a game with massive amounts of dialogue and quest text. And when I played it co-op without any voice acting in the game, we got to read it ourselves. And it's that whole thing of, you know, reading a book versus watching a movie. There was something about the game when the Enhanced Edition came out and they voice acted everything that really took a lot of the magic away for me. And I enjoyed it a lot less. And I enjoyed Divinity Original Sin 2 a lot less as well. For those that don't know, Divinity Original Sin 1 is a game that opens up with a big murder mystery plot. You're in a town and there's been a murder and you can speak to any number of people and try to unravel the mystery of what happened. I'll leave it there. I don't have to spoil it. And my experience of playing Divinity Original Sin 1, working out that mystery, when there was no voice acting and we could just go and speak to all the different townspeople and read out their dialogue for ourselves, was amazing. Like, genuinely amazing. And I've begun to realize I'm really into mysteries. When I said that earlier in the video, you guys probably thought I was talking about like lore speculation, like Guild Wars 2's mystery series and stuff. And yeah, I'm sure that's a part of it, but I really like a story that is, you know, like a murder mystery, like an Agatha Christie novel, right? And Divinity Original Sin 1 did that at the start. It was brilliant. And the game just kept going from strength to strength there. The whole second map you go to was very exciting. I felt like the leveling of characters and party compositions was fun. I felt like the loot was fun. And then Divinity Original Sin 1 kind of just like ended a bit early and felt a bit rushed towards the end. And that sucked, and it felt like it had come to its conclusion. A lot of RPGs really struggle with their scaling late game. Like, they're really robust and tightly made early game, and then they get too easy. And they're not actually well-made RPGs anymore, but here's the secret: people don't care because they like to feel powerful, okay? That is a dirty secret, I believe, of nearly all RPGs that have ever been produced. Most of them end up very shoddily balanced and wildly scaled because it's difficult for the devs to anticipate all the ways in which you might have grinded or gone out of bounds. And now the game's not actually that good, and it's not challenging you that much, and the puzzles aren't that thrilling, but it's okay. The consumer's still having fun because they like to feel powerful. And Divinity 1 struggled with that. If we say that Divinity 1 struggled with that, Divinity 2 was awful with it. Divinity 2 was a whole other plane of existence, and I actually found it to be very poorly made. I liked Divinity 2 for the first maybe quarter, and then I thought it dropped off. I thought it was a bit too chaotic with a lot of its combat mechanics, and as for its story, it never really had the cool murder mystery side to it. I still think these are both great games, don't get me wrong. I think that the first one's a solid 8 out of 10. I think the second one's a solid 6 or 7. Really decent games. I'm very enthusiastic about them. I had fun. I've done multiple playthroughs. I've even done a few modded playthroughs of them. I would consider myself a fan. But they're not the be-all and end-all. And honestly, based on how Larian did with the Divinity Originals in 2, do I actually think that Baldur's Gate 3 is going to be the greatest thing ever just because of that? Well, no, not necessarily. So that's how I feel about them. Hopefully that's a quick little fire review for you. And can I just say, these are slightly dated opinions. I haven't played them for a while. Not that they've updated or changed much. Next question from Brett C, who says, WP, would you rather eat a spoonful of ants that taste like vanilla ice cream or a spoonful of ice cream that tastes like ants? Very serious question here. A spoonful of ants that taste like ice cream or a spoonful of ice cream that tastes like ants? What do ants taste like? You know, I bet the ants don't taste like much. So I'd probably do that. I mean, you're just eating ice cream, right? So what does taste mean? Do you mean texture? Temperature? What does this constitute? Because if it has the temperature of, if it's ice cream with the temperature of an ant and the gritty, or lots of ants, right? And the texture of lots of ants balled together, then that's gonna be awful. That's gonna be horrible. I mean, you will have the comfort of knowing that you're only eating ice cream, but getting it down your throat, I mean, can I drink it with water? That would be easy. Take a spoonful of that and then just drink down some water, and what have you done? You've just had some ice cream, easy. On the other hand, I don't have any problem with eating ants, really. What's that nature documentary? Was it a David Attenborough production? Where you saw, it's very famous, there were some tribes people, maybe in, I can't remember where, but basically there's a big plague of locusts or mosquitoes flying through the sky. And what they do is they grease up some pans and then wash the pans through the air. And all these flies, or these aphids or whatever they are, they all just get caught on the grease. And then they ball them up in this sticky grease, just insects, just swarming flying insects. And then they just crush them together in a patty and fry them. And then they just fry the insects and they eat them. And they're like little insect burgers. Now, that might sound disgusting to you guys, but I mean, I would probably eat that. I'd be interested in doing that. I'm not so squeamish that I wouldn't do that. That would be an experience, right? So why not do that with a bunch of ants? And it tastes like ice cream? You're just asking me to eat a spoonful of what tastes like ice cream, and I can walk away from it saying, you know, I ate ants once. You know, I'll dine out on that story for a few months, a few years. Yeah, probably. I'll probably do the first one. Depends on the rules and how gross ants taste as well, in your estimation. Sondo says, are there any Nintendo franchises you'd be interested in covering? Not really. Well, kind of. I'm probably a much bigger Mario fan than you guys realize, and I'm probably a much bigger Zelda fan than you guys realize. But the thing is, my enthusiasms for Zelda and a lot of the more recent Mario stuff is because I watch Let's Plays. It's not really that I play them. I haven't really owned any Nintendo systems for a long time. So I'm sure I could do that stuff. I feel like it's not my domain, really, at the moment. But maybe one day. But I feel like that there's actually, you know, I kind of categorize YouTubers into different, like, buckets. And one of the big buckets of gaming YouTubers I think of Nintendo YouTubers. You know, I can just imagine a specific kind of gaming channel, and mostly what they are preoccupied with is their Nintendo fan audience and their Nintendo products. and it doesn't feel like me, so I don't know. I've never really thought about that much, but maybe one day. But yeah, I was more of like a Sega kid, and I didn't have a lot of those experiences when I was younger. I tend to think of a Nintendo fanaticism in the West being more of a United States thing than a UK thing. And that's just my own little stupid bias that I'm sure has no grounding in reality. But I tend to think of it as like a very American thing to be obsessed with Nintendo products and love them, you know, as far as the West is concerned. And here in Europe, maybe we liked, you know, the Mega Drive and so on more. Or sorry, as you call it, the Genesis. But I don't know, I'm probably wrong. And I haven't thought about it in terms of YouTube much. I'm definitely more into PC stuff and more elaborate, more complicated products. But I will say, I have a much keener appreciation for style and aesthetic and usability than I think most people realize. I think I tend to end up playing quite clunky, quite broad products. They've got a lot of stuff going on that feel more like software than games. And Nintendo is the other side of that paradigm, right? They tend to have very streamlined, very focused, very stylish looking products that have mass appeal. And I do appreciate those games and the kind of experience they sell. I think a lot more than people realize I do. Anyway. Thalandor. It's nice to see names like Thalandor here. I've let this sit for a few days since the channel update. I'm excited for what I'm seeing, if not a tiny bit concerned of finding the time to watch it all. Since it sounds... Well, don't worry, because the last week we haven't had any Let's Play episodes up while I've been doing this new thing. It sounds like you've been working at this for at least a few weeks. Yeah, all of January. What's my initial feeling about sustainability? Am I worried it's all about burnout? This is a good question. I am worried about burnout. I think I'd be a fool not to be worried about burnout, because it is a significant swap of how much I'm producing. But January went very well. February didn't go so well, just because I ended up doing generic MMO coverage for a week, and then not posting much of the stuff. And then I spent 3 weeks doing, 20 videos, ultimately, is how it turned out. Most of it was prep for this big, long weekend I've just done. So, I've got all the stuff done, but it was much more ebb and flowy than I expected. I don't think I should get burnt out as long as I've got the confidence and I'm enjoying myself. And that tends to just be how I am. So, we will see. The simple truth is this. I can't afford to get burnt out. I really can't. I mean, where does that leave me? Just a loser doing nothing and watching, whatever he's got fall apart? That's a terrible, terrible situation to be. So, hopefully that urge, that fear will keep me going. And, yeah, but I've got it in mind. And anyone who works for themselves should have something like that in mind. Next, Connor says, outside of YouTube and fan analysis, how have I been? Yeah, I've been pretty good. I would say I've been pretty good. One thing I managed to do that was a bit better in 2019 is find more time to do other things. Like, there was a good while, probably from 2014 to 2017, where I really wasn't doing much outside of Guild Wars at all. Like, if you remember the old podcasts I would do, we had, like, the movie club section, and a lot of weeks, I would be struggling to watch one movie all week. One movie. To then talk about it and be enthusiastic about it. But, I'm pretty on top of that stuff. I've been finding time at the end of every day to enjoy a movie or play another game. Like, I've had lots of playthroughs of other games that I have no interest in doing on YouTube, but I've been enjoying myself. Right now, I'm playing Dying Light for the second time, but actually getting through it. I'm doing an expansion in Dying Light that I'd never played. I don't really feel the need to talk about the zombie game with you all, but I've been playing Dying Light. I mentioned Terraria earlier. I did a playthrough of. I've found time for a playthrough around that same time of Stardew Valley. I played Monster Hunter and its expansion. I played Borderlands 2, the expansion, and 3, and its most recent expansion. I've found time for a lot of other games and a lot of fun things. And beyond that as well, more real-life leaning stuff, I've been able to do things that has nothing to do with real life. Sorry, nothing to do with real life. Nothing to do with gaming in my real life as well, and actually find time for that, which I let drop off for a while. So yeah, I'm pretty good, and I hope you are too. Next, we got Tesalian, who has a long question here. I know Twitch kind of replaced the Q&As for you, but it has always been interesting to see what other people were asking. I can sneak in 1.5 questions. First, can you elaborate on what you exactly think of Bangar's intentions are with Jormag? My impression from the prologue was that he's going to effectively ally with Jormag and offer himself up the Sons of Svanir style, thinking he could gain the powers of becoming Iceborn without giving anything up. After the latest episode, I was thinking I was wrong though. He needs the bow, he wants to kill Drakkar, so what exactly is his plan to control Jormag? Threaten it with the bow? I think he's supposed to be the antagonist, but I just can't think of something else that makes sense. Alright, you've got a lot of questions, so I won't spend too long on this, but I think You are putting him in the bucket of antagonist. I think that ArenaNet are being a little bit more sophisticated than that. I really do. I think they deceived us, and they made us think that this was kind of a typical plot where you've got this dumb, militaristic, arrogant Char that doesn't realize he's being manipulated. And then they pulled the rug out from under us, this most recent episode, and said, no, he does know he's being manipulated, but he's doing it anyway. Like, this is, which is somewhat unexpected and quite entertaining, therefore, I think. So the idea is, does Bangar really know what he's doing? Should we respect his intelligence a little bit more than we currently do? Since he does seem to be completely aware of the stakes. He does seem to be completely aware of the power that this dragon may have over him and does have over him. And he's cognizant of that, and he's got his plan, and he's going ahead with something anyway. And I think that makes him more interesting as a character. It doesn't mean he's necessarily just an antagonist. And I think that ArenaNet are being fairly sophisticated about what they're doing with Jormag as well. So, you know, in terms of what is Jormag's true ambition right now. There's a lot of very cool things they could be doing this season. Facts that we take for granted that may turn out to just be visions of one sort or another later. And I hope to see that ArenaNet do something good. But Bangar, I actually like his character and respect his direction way, 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 way more as of how they ended that episode there. And I think that, you know, is he any different to us, the commander? Really? You know, we know what these exact stakes are. We know that we are could be potentially manipulated in one way or another. We know that we've been out for blood on other Elder Dragons. What's our ultimate end ambition? And yet we barrel on anyway. Why? Well, you know, for us as the players of the video game, we have this sort of self-assurance that we are the protagonist. So we think we're fine. Well, hold on. Is that same self-assurance that he was the antagonist predisposing us to think that one thing will happen or another? Mate, you know, it's the same situation for the both of us, and I hope that ArenaNet does something cool. I haven't really managed to package these thoughts of mine into a way that makes a lot of sense and done a video about it yet, but I like what I've experienced with Bangar so far. I'll put it that way. 1.5. Which of the dragon minions retain their memories after being corrupted? I know with the Risen there was a bit of vagueness, especially with Risen versus Ghost. I don't remember for Corrupted Sylvari. Sons of Sylvanar definitely do, but I assume Branded didn't. I'm asking because there's a section in the first mission of Season 4, Episode 4, Jahai Bluffs, where a character tells you to run, gets branded, then says something like, I told you should have run. It's always bugged me. It's just a tiny line, but it seems like a contradiction. Are there other examples of Branded definitely or not definitely remembering things from their past? I don't remember that situation with the brand. You could say that that's magic mixing up. To be honest, this question is entirely unentertaining to me. You're asking me to espouse on the minutiae and BS of their silly little magic corruption that they've never given us proper or decent rules about for years. To be honest, I think that ArenaNet have been lazy and foolhardy and stupid about how they describe dragon corruption, and it's not worth your time worrying about. That's what I think. I don't think there are any sophisticated stories being pinned on it. I don't think it matters, and I don't care to stress myself thinking about something the devs clearly were lazy about themselves. That's what I think. And, you know, whether the Unchained of the Risen eventually come forward and become a little bit more interesting, I guess we'll see. But I feel like ArenaNet are being hand-wavy, and it completely disincentivizes me to give it even a second of thought. Maybe people in the comments can divulge something. And then you have a third question. When you make this video, can you use the background music you used to use for them? I know it's just some playlist of generic game music, but there's one track I get nostalgic for sometimes. I don't even know what game it's from. I just remember it from these videos. Well, you will have been listening to the music. I'll do it for you. I am pretty sure you are talking about the game Dust Force, and it would be my pleasure to put that music on there for you, because again, I feel like all this stuff that I'm doing over 2020, it's not new. A lot of people have been saying congratulations on the new ideas, stuff like that. It's not new. It's just me returning to me. And hopefully that music in the background will make some of you long-term viewers smile a bit as you listen to me ramble away here. Next question, Danny Munoz. As you mentioned in a few videos, the possibility of ArenaNet working on a console game. What are some things you would like to see if they were to do a single-player story? I'd love to see them work on an IP in the same scope and detail as God of War. Possibly Ritlock in the Mist, looking for Sahothin and his excursions there. Or maybe sometime during the first Guild War. I think that would be love to be a new take, but allowed to flesh out a character or story in more depth. Love the vids, keep it up. I don't like the idea of Ritlock in the Mist, because I feel like the Mist as a setting are too intangible. they're not really interesting to me on sort of a macro scale like that, to spend a ton of time, you know. It's too abstract, too arbitrary, too wishy-washy what the devs can or can't have happen. And I don't think there's enough to, like, anchor into. So that would really capture my attention. As a lore fanatic, I like to go to the Mist and see what they can speak to us about deeper mysteries of the universe. But I'm only really compelled about that if that is a slice of a greater experience. Not the whole experience. A whole experience in the Mist, I think that's a waste of effort, and I wouldn't want to see the devs do that. If the devs did do that, I would just interpret that as them looking for a very malleable setting they can be lazy about. And I don't want to feel like ArenaNet are doing that. I don't want to think about stuff like that corruption thing there. I want to feel like they're being serious and well-defined about the rules of their universe and not pushing it. And not following that, you know, that old... Jeff Grubb used to talk in interviews about how they had an open door, like, perspective for lore. You know, that you want to open doors and introduce ideas, but you don't want to close doors. No, I would rather a fantasy setting that has a more cohesive and, like, structured idea of what it's trying to do, instead of just keep throwing stuff on the table so that you don't, you know, limit yourself later. I think that's a bit lazy, really. I do. Well, maybe it's not fair for me to say lazy. I don't have any real idea of how much effort goes into these things. But as a consumer, I don't like it much. What I would say about a game is, you did mention the original Guild Wars there. I think that the most fascinating period in Guild Wars history, and there's probably some Guild Wars bias here, Tyrian history, there's probably some Guild Wars 1 bias here for me, is just before the events of pre-searing. I think the 20 to 30 year period before the Char attack Ascalon is a really cool setting. What do we have? We have Ore still active. It's not like majestic ancient Ore filled with gods, okay? So it's not like this unbelievable magical fantasy kind of environment that's difficult to depict. It's kind of a melancholic, lost, reverent, slowly maybe even deteriorating, you might say, Ore. Where, you know, they're overly bureaucratic perhaps, and, you know, they're trying to stay out of the guild wars, and they're preserving the city of the gods. No one can even go in there, and are they starting to lose their way? What do they look like? How do they feel? That's a really interesting culture. And I think that Season 4 did some amazing things, elaborating on Ore, and the idea that a lot of people knew what Kilbron was doing, and, you know, seeing young Kilbron, basically a story that has young Kilbron, and maybe, you know, King Razor, right as he's just come to the throne. You can see what's going on over in Kryta. You can see the Baradin still in charge at Ascalon, and how, you know, Adalbern is going to wrestle the throne away from them. There's a lot of really fun... And then you bring the dwarves back as well. You have multiple factions of dwarven influence. You've got the mystery of the druids in the Maguma jungle. As far as like a central Tyrian story is, I think that that's a really rich area of history. And I think if you were going to do a game, like a single-player RPG, that is a brilliant period of time to set it in. But what kind of game would I make? It would not be a globetrotter, okay? So Guild Wars 1 and Guild Wars 2 I would call a globe-trotting RPG, in that you go everywhere, right? You go to you're in Ascalon, and now you're in the Shiver Peaks, and now you're in Kryta, and oh, we're going to be in the Fire Island Chain by the end. And you're given like this very shallow but broad representation of the whole world, right? That's a decent idea for laying the groundwork for a big new franchise. You kind of dip your toe in a lot of areas, and you talk about the breadth of the world. But I think it's now time for ArenaNet. If they were to do a single-player game or a console game, I think it's now time for ArenaNet to stop thinking wide and start thinking deep. And any kind of game, I wouldn't have Globeshot. I would have it be set in somewhere specific, or a selection of specific places. I'm talking like 30 hours of decent RPG gameplay set at the city of Rin. A bit like Dragon Age 2, right? We spend a lot of time at Rin, and we learn a lot about Ascalon and Ascalonians and what they're doing, and the local dungeons and issues there. And then maybe there's a small period of time where we're looking at somewhere even more hyper-focused. I usually think about the outposts of Pike and Square. And then maybe there's another arc or another act where we have another very focused look at a specific area in Ore. And then maybe there's a final arc or act where we're having a very specific look at a place in Kryta or the Shiver Peaks or whatever. And there are dwarves around and stuff, but you don't go everywhere. But where you do go, you get a really rich and compelling and believable, authentic view of a fictional world that is fully realized in a way that the MMOs can't do. That's what I want ArenaNet to do. If you're going to stick with Tyria as a setting, push Tyria in places that you haven't before. And what that means is maybe a product that's a bit more narrow in its focus. And you can do that if you're looking away from MMOs as well. Obviously, we have no idea whether ArenaNet are doing this. They might view themselves as an MMO studio, and that's it. And the next game they're doing is going to be purely about pandering to MMO communities, and, you know, it will be like Guild Wars 3, and it will be another big globe-tropping thing. I'm obviously also happy to see that. But you'll split the scope of your question, you know, an idea of having another game alongside the MMOs, that is what I'd be an advocate for. And you were totally right about the first Guild War. All right, MS says, what's the proper map, living story, zone progression order to proceed properly through the lore? That's a weird question, because Guild Wars is very good at explaining this to you. Just follow the story journal. Nothing else matters. Not really. I mean, don't sequence break, as in don't go to the jungle before you've done all this other stuff. The game isn't going to lead you to Augury Rock before you've done Claw Island, right? You don't have to worry. Just play through this. I'm not sure what more you want from me. There might be some places where you can sequence break, like sneaking into Scarlet's secret lair when you first visit the Dermond Priory, but overall, you should be alright if you just follow your way down. Dawson Chapelier says, do you think they should implement actual matchmaking for strikes? And I'm not talking about typical dungeon matchmaking where you choose a role and queue. I'm thinking just to get people in squad and into the action. Also love the videos, WP, keep it up. No, I don't. Whenever I've done a squad, you guys are going to say this is because you're wood and potatoes. It's not that at all. Whenever I've done a squad, if you have a friend, you create a squad, you add that friend into it, and you go on LFG, then you can fill it up and you can play the squad. I think the fact that they're going to be adding squad entrants into the Eye of the North with the upcoming patch will probably do a lot. And what more do we need? I don't think they need to... Look, you got to understand as well. If I'm going to be an advocate for a new system in Guild Wars 2, it'd best be a goddamn good system and a really justifiable thing to do. Because you guys have to understand, they are stretched. They have a limited number of resources. If you're going to ask them to do something, or if you're going to think casually about what this game needs, don't. Don't be casual about it. They have to be very precise and very meaningful with whatever they're doing. Don't ask them to build new infrastructure and pursue new ideas unless they are big bang for your buck ideas. That's what I try to do. So would I ask for some kind of extra thing about getting people into specifically strikes? Hell no. I'm really sorry. But I just don't even think strikes are that important in the grand scheme anyway. I know that ArenaNet seem to be going for them, but hey. Next, we got William Hawkins, who says, would you like to see bounties in Icebrew Saga? Well, since all the infrastructure on this one is there, or was there, they just need to actually fill it in. I think yes. I don't think you'd get big returns out of putting bounties into Icebrew Saga, but I think that the main pull of them would be... Bounties are currently ammunition against the prospect of the saga as a whole. And what do I mean by that? I mean that people are negative about the saga because not only is it not expansion rivaling, but it's not even Living World Season 4 rivaling. Living World Season 4 had bounties. Why are they not in this season? You might see that as a petty argument, but it is an argument people are making. So if ArenaNet put them in, at least it would close that door down, and it's going to be healthy for the perspective of the saga at the very least. And bounties are okay. Bounties are just another one of those features, though, that are a brilliant concept and needed to be embellished upon instead of moved away from. And, well, what did we see the devs do? Next, you've got... next and finally, this is the last question, which is good because my throat is getting sore. It's from Grokolot, who says... And I don't even know the answer to your question. I'm so sorry. Grokolot says, how and when did you meet Boots? Have you ever met up in real life? So, the real life thing, Boots has proposed we meet up in real life. I won't go into big details. I feel like this is, just as much his conversation as it is mine. And I actually turned him down. Unfortunately, it just wasn't a good time for me, and we didn't do it. And I get the sense I really bummed him out at the time as well. I swore to him, though, that next time the opportunity came up, we would do it. And I still swear to it. He seemed doubtful, but we will see. As for when I met him, you know what? I actually can't remember. I really can't remember. I would say this, though. I genuinely consider Boots a really, really good, really long-term friend of mine. I feel like Boots really gets... He's a very, very patient person, and he's a very accommodating person, and he's a very laid-back person, and genuinely, someone I very, very, very deeply respect. I can't remember when I met him, but I feel like he's a very long-term friend now, and it's been a pleasure, really. So, yeah, I'm not sure. I'll have to ask him after this video is done. Well, there you go, and you guys can subscribe to his channel and check out his stuff, by the way. It's World of Enders. He did a guide about combo fields recently. And he also invited me recently to play some PvP, some 2v2s with him. But I'm not playing PvP this year because I'll be more productive if I'm not. So yeah. There you go, guys. That is the February Super Q&A. Thank you very much for watching. I hope I have had some interesting answers for you here. I hope they haven't been too self-indulgent or whatever. But at the end of the day, these kinds of videos are going to be a little bit more about me and, you know, all that kind of stuff. So hopefully you found some worth in it. And listen, if you want your question answered... please feel free to head on over to Patreon and respond to the post over there. If you're a follower, believe me, I answered. I think there was like 2 questions never made it in today. I will answer your question on whatever you like. It can be about Guild Wars, it could be about games, it could be about anything. One of the reasons I'm doing this is because I'm hoping to keep people remembering that Patreon exists, and so that not everyone leaves. Just a bit of an update about that. I announced all my stuff. A few of you guys did join last month. And now that the month has gone over, a ton of you left again, okay? So I'm doing this video to try and, like, keep it feeling like it was worth it as we go along the year. And so, yeah, I figure that's important to remember. There'll be a link in the description. And aside from that, hope you guys enjoyed the videos that are coming up tomorrow. I want to remind you all, Elder Scrolls is not going away. Living World Season 2 is not going away. But there is an additional 20 video series that you're about to watch coming up over the next few weeks. Cheers, everybody. See you over there.